There is no such thing as a normal human. School is the worst for people with neurodiversity. The idea that some people are less able to participate can't be a good thing. The famous example of the crash test dummies, right? That actually represent no one. AI is like what news groups were before Netscape. When ChatGPT arrived, they thought that that is AI.
Welcome to Second Wind. Today we're talking to David Vogel. As Executive Experience Director at Hypersolid, he argues that neurodiversity reframes accessibility as foundational rather than additive, challenging the assumption of a normal user. David, welcome to Second Wind.
Fantastic to be here. Thank you.
You guys are both in Amsterdam, is that right?
Yes.
You guys killed it in the Olympics, by the way, the Winter Olympics. Congratulations.
Thank you. David and I did quite a lot of speed skating and taught them everything they know.
I thought you were doing the ones with the broom.
Oh, the curling.
Oh, right.
How did the Dutch do in the curling?
No, we're way too cool for that. Now we can only do skating, that's all.
I want to know about neurodiversity and how it shapes the way that you see systems, environments, and design responsibility.
Yeah, that's a big question. When I was growing up, there was no such thing as neurodiversity, diagnoses, ADHD.
Yeah.
There's just like busy kids, creative kids, kids that forget stuff.
Kids that bounce off walls.
Get a lot of negative feedback. So, and I think all of us kids, and probably that still goes for a large number of people today, just basically take it on the chin, try to adapt, learn to cope, to find strategies. And in some cases, that's easier than other cases. I think I was lucky to an extent where I had a supportive environment. I had some skills and some talents that could maybe make up for some of the things that were more difficult as a result of having ADHD. I still haven't got an official diagnosis of ADHD, but both my sons have got that diagnosis, and so does my wife. And so having gone through that process of diagnosis a few times, even the first time, you're like, okay, well, that's obvious.
And you're in there, and the doctor's like, should we talk about you?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, I probably brought it up myself, first of all. I'm like, okay,
you're like, I don't need the diagnosis because everybody else has it, so I'm just with them.
Right. Yeah.
You're part of a
reverse
club.
osmosis. Indeed. So in a way, I think this has always been part of the system, and that goes more broadly for accessibility. And maybe to sort of jump ahead, if you'll allow me, to some of the bigger conclusions, is that the big opportunity is for us to reframe accessibility, whether it's neurodiversity or any other kind of different ability, away from an edge case and towards the mainstream, because collectively we are the mainstream, right? There is no such thing as a normal human, even though all of industrial design, all of digital design is predicated on this idea of an average human. And I've done some research into the history of that. It's sort of tied up with the way we have architected the Industrial Revolution, the way our capitalist system works, etc. So you can go super deep on that, like the why
factory
of it.
workers, right?
Totally, and just design standards so that you can get approvals, etc. And this whole idea of standards is really suspicious, because I mean the famous example of the crash test dummies, right? That actually represent no one. They don't even represent the average human male that they claim to represent, let alone all the other people that are not average human males, and that are still in cars, and are arguably at great risk, and greater risk, because of this drive for standardization. So it's sort of a
before we
fantasy.
go too deep, can we just go? I think ADHD and neurodiversity is one of those things where like a lot of people don't really understand what it means.
Yeah, that I don't want to claim any kind of expertise on the subject. I'm just a neurodiverse human being, and so I can talk about myself. Yes, for some people, the age in ADHD, the hyperactive piece is an important factor, and that for instance, my eldest son and also myself to some degree when I was younger have that kind of hyperactivity and bouncing up the walls, etc. For some people, that isn't a factor at all, and it's much more about directed attention, being able to work within frameworks, particularly frameworks that you don't like, and sort of getting the discipline together to do tasks that you don't enjoy. But it has a very important flip side, which is that you also have the ability to really get good and fast at tasks that you do enjoy. So this idea of hyperfocus is obviously very famous as an aspect of ADHD. And I think they're similar, although I have less personal experience with autism, which, by the way, is also not, those two things don't define neurodiversity. It's much broader than that.
Is it mostly school-based? Is that sort of where you see the challenges emerge personally, and then for your kids?
I think so, yes. Yeah. The short answer is yes. School is the worst for people with neurodiversity because it is such a single-minded system that everybody has to go through, and it's this.
Here's the list.
Single.
You check all these boxes in a row. If you don't check them, you're naughty. Go to the principal.
Right, totally. And that's the other part of school that's so bad, is that you go to school at an age where you have a lot of people judging you and telling you what you are, who you are, how you should behave. And so a lot of people develop very poor self-image because they've been told so many times that they suck at this or that, or that it's ridiculous that they forget things so often, or it's terrible that they haven't brought their homework or didn't do it in the right way, etc. So it's this combination of a system that requires a very single-minded approach and a reward system that is, that doesn't take into account diversity in general, but also not neurodiversity.
When I look at the world today and the economy today and what jobs will be like for our children, it's just incredibly frustrating to go through the process of even preschool, like before school, when you have a baby. I don't know what it's like in Europe or Amsterdam, but have you seen the Bluey baby race episode, right? Where it's like this competition to see which baby does what first. But it's to a degree where like every week there's things your baby has to do, and if they don't do them, there's something wrong. Right? Which creates a ton of anxiety and stress on parents.
I'm sure we can go in thousands of different directions here. The neurodiversity aspect, when it's coupled with accessibility and that conversation, particularly around, David, your work. What is access to you? How do you define access?
You're bringing all the deep questions, and I have a hard time answering those in a succinct way. So
stay focused.
I'll do my best.
What's your favorite color?
Exactly.
He's not listening.
He's not listening. I asked him a question.
What is access? I think access has become this very loaded term in the past few years. First, because it became an incredibly strong focus area, which I think some people took to extremes. It has recently become a dirty word, particularly in the US, but I think that bleeds somewhat into the rest of the world. That attitude, particularly because the old white guys who are still in charge are quite happy to hear that alternative narrative, like, no, let's forget about DEI.
We don't need to change anything.
We don't need
it's fine, we don't
for
need
me. Inclusivity. Exactly. So there's so much noise around this topic. And at the same time, if you boil it down, it's actually so incredibly straightforward. It's so hard to disagree with this notion that even if you take the moral dimension out of it altogether and you just look at it from a very practical or even a business lens, the idea that some people are less able to participate can't be a good thing, right? And unless you're trying to exclude them on purpose, and then it's a different topic altogether. But if you're trying to create an experience, whether it's for good or for money or for shits and giggles, you want everybody to be able to participate in the same way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they all do it in the same way, but that they get the same thing out of it. And I think a lot of this discussion has really been couched in moral terms, and there is a moral dimension to it. But I've always been a little bit wary of casting the designer as this kind of person with special responsibilities and this kind of big coat that we put on and sort of pretend that we are now, we have this responsibility to change X, Y, and Z. I don't think designers have that responsibility any more than any other human.
So
like we're all.
Who do you think does have the responsibility? Is it the technologists? Is it the leaders?
Yes.
Leaders,
Yes.
Governments? Is it brands? Is it clients? Who is it?
All of the above.
All of
right?
the above.
Right. I think, and I would even go further. It's not just that everybody has the responsibility. I don't think, apart from a bunch of, ideologues who are running around at the moment, I don't think almost anybody is against this notion. I don't think this is a question of nobody gave a shit and therefore we're in this mess. I think it's also been largely down to just economics. Design has always been a very manual process. And not, when I say design, I now include also the development and the business aspect of it, etc. It's always been something that is built on scarcity, and therefore you kind of you try and do as much as you can with the limited resources that you have, and that tends to translate into designing for a mean. And I think that's a fallacy. But it's a very hard fallacy to break. You need some kind of abundance to be able to go beyond that middle of the road solution.
So can you give us some, because it's hard sometimes to grasp, the concepts, as it were, without some concrete examples. What can you give it? What examples can you give us?
Well, probably the most interesting example that really speaks to this topic explicitly is the work that we're doing with Google at the moment. And what that is all about is not only thinking about accessibility in a broader sense and including neurodiversity, but also thinking about design in a broader sense, in that it transcends the sheet of glass, but it also goes to the built environment and the relationship between digital and physical experiences. So we're very much in an exploratory discovery phase at the moment. So it's a little bit hard to say what exactly it will end up becoming. But the ambition that we have is to design a set of rules that can be captured in a systematic way and can therefore be used both by human designers when they're considering the use cases that they need to support, but potentially in the future also systems or AI systems that either design or adjust design on the fly. And this goes back to the point of abundance that I was referencing, the opportunities to create different versions of the same thing. Something that traditionally was called personalization, right? We've always wanted to do this. We've always wanted to create an experience that was personalized to that individual and a little bit different to this other individual. Even the ones who were best at it, like Amazon or Netflix, are actually pretty bad at it. I mean, I don't know about you, but my experience of going to Amazon.com doesn't make me feel like it really knows me. Perhaps these really closed loop systems like TikTok, they start to feel a little bit more like it really knows me. But even there, it's easy to sort of see where the prompts are and, where the feedback loops are, etc. So this idea of personalization has been around since the internet is around and probably before. But it's now starting to have a convergence of technologies that allow us to really start to deliver on it. And even that is still early stages. I think there's a lot of hype and a lot of promises around it from, the frontier labs whose many millions and billions that they need depend on a big story. But they're not wrong. They're just wrong about the timeline, I would say, but they're not wrong about the potential.
Because is it a fun stage that you're in? Is it like playing? Or is it number crunching?
A bit of both. what it actually consists of at the moment is the team at Hypersolid doing a lot of quite hard thinking and quite conceptual work. And then we have regular check-ins with our client, Ryan at Google, who's an incredibly smart individual. And he's been very passionate about this topic and investing in this topic in Google for a very long time. And so he's really the catalyst behind this this concept and this idea. And once a week, maybe sometimes twice a week, we have these very intense sessions where we, just go through all the concepts and how it's working. And it's a very, honestly, makes my brain hurt every time, just to figure out and also to force ourselves to stay at this, 30,000 foot level and avoid the risk of going to execution too quickly, because we first need to understand whether the thing sort of makes sense, whether the system makes sense, and it can, it at a holistic level sort of fits together. And then we can start to break it into use cases and application spaces. And so we're starting to do that a little bit now. We're starting to create some actual prototypes so that we can see, okay, if we give it some input and it goes through the system, does it give us meaningful output?
Can you give us an example? It could be AKQA or Hypersolid, but how do you see this accessibility impacting your work?
Well, I'll give you an example from AKQA where we did some really interesting work with Siemens Building Technologies. You hear a lot about the big 5 tech companies, but Siemens is probably the same scale, and it's actually not just hype and code. It's actual factories and hardware and industrial stuff. And we worked with Siemens Building Technologies to see if we could take all the infrastructure that they put in buildings to do energy management and to use it to create smart office solutions, basically to allow people to work better together. But some of the interesting things that we did in this initial discovery phase was sort of explore, almost like an anthropologist, how people interact with each other and what role technology can play there. We realized through our research that there's this really weird tension between people getting annoyed by other people and at the same time knowing that they can't really complain about it because they also annoy other people probably in some way.
This
and
is
so
the
there's
tuner
all
in the
this
microwave insight.
I don't know that one. What's that one?
Someone comes and microwaves their lunch and it really stinks out the office.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, probably. But it's 100 different things, right? It's like whether people are chewing gum or are maybe talking when I'm trying to concentrate. It's little things that might not even be, you don't know that you're perhaps at that very moment annoying somebody. And so we explored how spaces could sort of register noise, for instance, and just play that back in an ambient way through, for instance, a shifting light color. And really all that does is just, it gives a little signal that whatever I'm doing, I'm changing the environment. I'm impacting the environment, and the environment is sort of reflecting that impact back at me. And it doesn't
as the
take
noise level increased, the lights would change?
Right, exactly. So what if I enter into a space where a bunch of people are working and the light is maybe a little bit greenish, or we would use colors, but it could also be, the strength of the light could be anything. We use colors. So green is like a calm environment, and then orange is more like a busy kind of collaborating environment. And all it's doing is it's showing me that I am changing the environment from calm to conversational, and I can take an action on that, or I can ignore it, or other people can sort of feedback on that, etc.
It's almost like traffic lights, right? But sort of applied to the people's voices in the workplace. Right,
but it's like traffic lights, but there's no agreement on what happens if it goes orange. It's not like walk if it's orange, or stop talking if it's orange. It's more like, hey, something's happening and I caused it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You've talked about, or you've argued against the idea that AI becomes the interface. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people didn't think about AI until ChatGPT arrived. And when ChatGPT arrived, they thought that is AI. And so
Well, we're
even
very
today,
used to typing things into boxes, aren't we? We're very good
right,
at that.
exactly,
I
exactly.
love
It just
typing into a
builds.
box.
Nice
Yeah, I'm
clean
sure we all do.
box. Nice
Yeah.
clean box.
No, exactly. But we laugh about it, but it's remarkable how many clients I talk to that when you start to talk about the opportunities of AI, they can't really get much behind this idea of a chatbot that sits on the right hand bottom corner of your screen, and you can click on it and then you can start typing stuff in, and it becomes this big text based conversation like an SMS. And that's kind of what I'm arguing against. I think that's the very first, very primitive. It's like the
kind of DIY approach to AI, right? Which is just, as you say, you open ChatGPT on your browser and then randomly kind of ask it questions disconnected from all the other pieces of your like stack.
I think that AI is like what news groups were before Netscape. Like we could talk to each other and it was amazing. I could just talk to this person in South America in real time. And it was like, crazy, absolutely crazy. But it didn't even scratch the surface of what the internet then could become. And not only that, if you don't just think about AI going from chat into more of an interactive experience in the browser, there's a whole bunch of other technologies that are also converging. I mean, it's not hip to talk about the metaverse anymore, but there are a lot of innovations in smart glasses, and that
there are no hips in the metaverse. Remember, there's no legs. It's a torso.
Exactly.
Oh dear.
Nice.
He's had his coffee. He's had his coffee.
You win the dad joke award.
So how do you talk to clients about AI? Because you guys have done work years ago where it was like AI powered dealership. I know for in the automotive space, like. Because I think what I see, we have a lot of conversations about AI in my day job, and I think people just don't really know how to use AI. Because as you say, it's a very easy window to chat to, have a conversation with, and that's useful. But obviously, there's like a larger systemic sort of transformation aspect here. What are you hearing from clients, and how are you advising them to sort of like to take advantage of this technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm still getting my head around it, and so are all of us. And there are a number of problems. I mean, we've talked about the impact of AI. It's very hard to extrapolate into the future, even if you think about a single application of AI. Like, where's that going to go? And how fast should I jump on that particular bandwagon? Should I be a leader? Should I be a fast follower? So that's already a complicated conversation in and of itself.
Should I have an AI child or a real child? Because as
AI
Sam Altman
child,
said,
please.
humans
AI
are very
child.
energy hungry and they use much more resources than AI. Very tasteful take. Very good optics.
Absolutely. Yes, robots.
If only we knew someone in PR reputation. Kerrie.
Oh, I love an AI child.
Actually, I have 2 kids, and I would recommend human children for now.
Oh, you say that now. You say that now.
No, but I mean, so even thinking about what we call intelligent experiences. So thinking about, okay, when AI jumps out of its little box and jumps out of its little clippy analog and becomes actually an adaptive, rich interface that doesn't just understand who you are and then gives you the content that you want, like traditional personalization has done, but actually becomes this continuous interaction between you and it. So it's not just the output that becomes richer, but also the input becomes much richer because through all sorts of behaviors or conversational, I can start to impact what I see, etc. So that's just the experience layer. But then you said, okay, but what does that mean for our data proposition? Because that also requires a complete new architecture. Our whole stack needs to be different. So then you start talking about AI.
Brands are good at that,
technology.
Right? Really good at data and systems.
Well, I mean, it's a different conversation that you're having. And then it's like, okay, but now you're talking about systems, and now you're talking about agents, and now you're talking about processes inside the organization that are changing. So what are we talking about anymore? Are we still talking about AI? Yeah, we're still talking about AI, but we're talking about all these different application levels. And so that's one really hard part of having a discussion with clients about AI, is that it's everywhere, and like, what are we talking about right now? Another
It's
one is
change,
that there are
right?
just
We have to change
right,
really big things about the way we work.
right, yeah, and that's by
We don't like
definition a hard
change.
conversation. Right,
Humans don't like to
exactly.
change, right?
Right, and at the same time, there's a big awareness that we all need to change.
Yeah.
Now, our boss has told us that we need to do something with AI, and so we're having the conversation. But do I really love this conversation? No, and I think a lot of it is that
Because I see that a lot. It's like this, and it feels like this is the year the boss is saying, "Okay, we're going to do something," and so you get this sort of downward pressure, which is obviously important, right? You can't really do anything unless you have C-suite buy-in, but then you have this layer of people who are responsible for acting on that. And they're very busy because we've had the year of efficiency. So everybody's scrambling to, keep the trains running. And then we have endless complexity of sort of like the brand experience. And so you have this like infinite complexity. And then you have to, I have to figure out how I'm going to change everything we do. And all of our systems. And all of our technology.
You've got no team left.
Exactly.
There's no one there to implement.
Yeah. So all of that is hard. At the same time, I think we are tentatively coming out of this optimization and efficiency cycle a little bit. I think and we've seen that with some of the reports coming out. Famously, Accenture has started to show how the supposed efficiencies may not be efficiency really, but they might just be shifting one type of work to another type of work. I'm no longer doing the work, but I'm checking the work the whole time.
What?
Yeah, right.
Right. And so I think some of the conversations are shifting a little bit away from the kind of hype. We need to do something. Let's do a sprint. Let's do something cool. Let's show our bosses that we're all about AI. The first learnings are in. The first reflections are happening. There's obviously an enormous amount of attention, so everybody learns about it in real time. And so I think that there are some opportunities with some of our more, let's say, forward-looking clients that are also set up technologically to be able to really benefit from a more AI-first approach. That we're really starting to move into real use cases, and Lotus Showroom is one example that you mentioned that they were very early. We really created
that was
this
23,
immersive,
right?
Right, exactly. We were
early.
Still playing. We've got a cat joining the conversation.
Troy.
No, I mean this is.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of him.
Well,
at least it's his front end, David.
More.
Most people get the back end,
Exactly.
so you're happy with that.
Frankly, you've got the ears.
Small mercies.
Be grateful for what you wish for.
Yeah, so no, that was early days, and it was a good example of how AI can be actually really immersive, and it can be really beautiful, and it can be really experiential and rich. And I think we're starting to see very few, but some initial examples of those applications. And the more we'll see that, and I think honestly we'll have to make many of them because we're well positioned to. And then we can start to use those as proof points and say, well, actually, no, it's not just Clippy plus. It's actually a much richer experience. And that's something that we can demonstrate from other clients.
And I think the big note there, obviously, is like we're talking about a dealership experience, right? For Lotus, and I don't want to speak to Lotus's dealership experience, but I think I've been to plenty of dealers, and I worked on Volkswagen early in my career. And I think the really important note here is that we're not comparing this to the greatest retail experience you've ever had in your life, right? We're not saying that AI is going to be the best, most luxurious, most personalized experience, but is it going to be better than your average dealership experience? And I think it's the same thing with content, where we see everybody take this measuring stick to AI content where they're like, well, this isn't the best film I've ever seen. And they're comparing it to maybe the best piece of work they've done or this really super high bar. But the reality is like a lot of customer experiences are really bad. A lot of advertising is really bad. A lot of content is really bad. And so I just think it's important that we acknowledge the reality of the context here and what we're sort of comparing, these experiences to. But I think the dealership one in particular is a huge room for improvement there.
No, I agree 100%. I think digital has always been about the one term that we used a lot at AKQA, my previous company, was the democratization of luxury. Right? This idea that experiences that were only accessible to a few people in the past can be scaled because of the zero marginal cost of distribution for internet content. And that's been a really long, old and powerful idea that has driven a lot of innovation online. And the same goes for AI, right? That's going to supercharge that. And once again, because it can do a bunch of stuff that we really used to have to use people for. Really that interaction level, that personal attention, understanding who you are, etc. Like I said before, that's really not been possible through old school personalization. And so we're going to get this new wave of democratization of unique experiences that were previously very, very expensive and will now become really, really cheap or free.
I'm curious if you feel the advice you give to clients, if there's a consistency there, or do you feel like every client, in terms of where to start with AI, right? I think a lot of people are a bit confused about this. Some people are doing like, pickup shots or like B-roll in there. Like we need to fix like more like a VFX application in the advertising brand world. But I think overall people just don't know where to start.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's more the latter than the former. I think there are some obvious use cases for an agency. It's funny. We kind of came to the conclusion that the obvious use cases we should pursue because SaaS companies will pursue them, right? Like startups will pursue them. And so they will just put all their eggs in that basket. And as an agency, as a generalist, it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah.
We're seeing that come true, but we're also seeing the other side of that, where it turns out that those startups maybe aren't bespoke enough. They're not unique enough. They don't take into consideration or they don't connect to the stack of our clients. So to some degree, we can pick up the slack that they're leaving off again and being more deliberate and more bespoke. But it's also that our focus isn't on the type of initial use cases. So a lot of the, asset creation, we're not really a digital, like a campaign agency. We're not really an ad agency. We're much more of a product platform, technology, customer experience agency, brand experience agency. So the obvious use cases in terms of asset creation, customer service, they aren't the ones that we're primarily focused on. We believe in this kind of best of breed approach where, we understand our client very deeply. We understand where the value sits for them. And then that basically always becomes some level of custom approach where we try and, of course, optimize as much as possible and use reusable frameworks, et cetera, and apply our learnings from the work we've done before. So there's some efficiency there, but it's always going to be a bespoke approach. And to your point, the entry point can also be different. We've done really deep kind of data restructuring work for Heineken, where we help them kind of deduplicate different types of products and sort of understand much better where their products was coming from and going to across a range of vendors.
So like operations, like where the physical product was actually
totally, hardcore operational stuff. We have quite strong data engineering capability, so a lot of our work is there. And like I said, I think the intelligent experiences part is where we see the most opportunities for companies, because if you can do the same thing that, let's say, mobile introduced when we had all these services, and Nike was great at this, right? Creating all these amazing services for free, because that means that I can interact with the brand. I think the big mistake that a lot of brands make at the moment is that they need to optimize for ChatGPT because, agents are going to be between the brand and the consumer, and ChatGPT is going to be the one interface for everything, etc. That's the biggest mistake you can make, because if you do that, then you hand the keys to your consumers to OpenAI or whoever else.
It's sort of like when everybody built up their Facebook because it was free, and then it was like, oh, now they're going to monetize it. Shocking. Shocking.
I mean, Cory Doctorow wrote a fantastic book about enshittification of how platforms kind of take your customers and then charge you for access to them. And I think that is alive and well, that problem with AI. And so understanding how you can, use ChatGPT or Gemini or any other kind of LLM to identify your audience, then bring them to you, and then use that same power of AI to create fantastic experiences that are in your domain and that are specific to your product and your brand, and that deliver the kind of value that LLMs can't give on their own because they're so generalist.
But
That's
the
something
AI
that we
is
see
behind the scenes, powering the back end that powers the front end.
Yes. Yeah, and it can be more upfront. It can be a conversational interface. I mean, text is not bad for everything, but images are also really great, and data visualizations can be really, like, there are lots of ways to get interaction between the consumer and the system.
David, we are running out of time, as joyous as it is to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Second Wind. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.